Hey there, viewers. Welcome back to the Self-Made Auto Channel. That's a 2007 Chevrolet. It's a classic. It's got the big 5.3 and it's got the note. Quick summary of what's been done and what's going on now. It says, blankety blank, checked the engine light due to fuel pump not sending info to dash instrument E to F. Gas gauge hasn't worked for 2 to 3 years. Fill, reset trip 300 miles, fill again. Hasn't been an issue for inspection. Replaced pump, lots of dollar signs after that word. Gauge on dash, still not right. Imagine that, a GM cluster that doesn't work. O2 sensor, bake 2 downstream replaced, mass airflow cleaned, no help, mass airflow replaced. Frank, why do people do that? But it's probably got some wing dong freaking Chinese Amazon one in there. Fuel trim rich, imagine that. New filter, checked for air leaks with starting fluid sprayed around, which that's used for checking for lean, not for rich. Intake air box and hoses connected to air box, no results. Presently ready to burn it to the ground, but have too much money invested. So you know what I know, which is nothing. We don't know what the original code was, but we know it's got an aftermarket mass airflow and possible rich codes, which kind of sucks. Hopefully he's still got the OEM. For whatever reason, when people start littering their vehicle with parts, one of the first things they do is throw away all the factory sensors and then create a whole bunch of problems. So I guess long story short, we don't know what the original problem was. So we may have to kind of deal with what the current problem is and then work our way backwards. So let's pop the hood. I hit the latch. I threw the Altel in there. And it is a Wing Dong China mass airflow. Let me look inside the vehicle, see if he still has any original parts. Because that's definitely not going to help matters. That any mass airflow sensors aftermarket never work. Bottom line. Hey, lucky us, huh? Let's see what's in here. Found this on the front seat. Please be the OEM. Please be the OEM. It is the OEM. Before we even get started, I'm just going to install this because, like I say, the aftermarket mass airflows are garbage. 100% of the time, every time. Okay, we got the key in the cut on position. I did replace the mass airflow and put the OEM back in there. I don't know if this will auto ID the VIN or not. We'll let it try. And you know, can that mass airflow be bad? Absolutely. The OEM one could be, but at least we're starting out with the OEM. We're not trying to figure out any kind of weird issue here with aftermarket. I don't know what it is with aftermarket mass airflows, but boy, I tell you, they are rarely do you get one that actually works. Okay, here we go. We're Silverado Classic. Automatic transfer case, we'll just hit yes. 4-button selectable, we don't know. We're just pushing buttons here. There we go. Under 8,600 gross vehicle weight. Probably drum brakes, not sure. This stuff's all kind of irrelevant for what we're doing. I'm going to let it go through and just do a system scan. These take a little longer on these old ones. And we'll see what we have for codes. It's got 3 codes, it says, in the PCM. So we'll hurry up and wait here. Let's see. She's all done. We'll hit report. Rich bank 1, rich bank 2. Knock sensor low frequency. Mill requested. So all 3 of those are turning that money light on. Class 2 day link malfunction, lost comm with cluster. These are history codes. Okay. We're dealing with some rich drivability problems, which is exactly what he indicated. Before we look, let's talk for a second. We're going to go in and look at data, but the first thing that comes to mind when we think about rich codes, which is kind of unusual, you know, what can make it run rich? You know, something faulty in the PCV system, you know, sucking a lot of crankcase gas, you know, kind of unusual. Crappy aftermarket injectors, or stuck OEM injector, but to have one on both banks, we're not really probably leaning that way. You know, unless we had 2 OEM injectors fail at the same time, one on each bank, that would be kind of weird. Okay. You could have an O2 sensor that's not reporting correctly, giving it a false sense of rich. Again, both banks, pretty unlikely. Purge valve stuck open. That'll make it run rich on both banks, but it'll also make it run lean once it evacuates a canister. So usually you'll get those two codes, rich codes, lean codes. Over-reporting mass airflow. That'll make it run rich on both banks. The other thing that'll make it run rich, if it's a flex fuel vehicle, if the alcohol counter's off. So, you know, if you're burning alcohol, like E85, it takes more. They burn at a ratio of like 10 to 1 instead of, you know, 15 to 1, like gasoline, 14.7, you know. So if the vehicle says, hey, we're running alcohol, but it's actually got gasoline in it, it's just going to pour the coal right to it. You know, it's going to miscalculate. So those are some things I think of. Of course, fuel pump, fuel pressure regulator, you know, an increase in fuel pressure, something of that along those lines. Coolant temperature sensor would be something you could think of as well. If it was failed within a parameter where it wasn't setting a light, which would be unusual, that can make it run rich. You know, if it thought it was, you know, 20 degrees outside, bad example for today. If it thought it was 20 below zero and it was really 50 out, you know, it's going to run rich. But usually there's some redundancy built in where they'll check it compared to other temperature sensors and then, you know, typically flag a code. So those are things that go on in my little mind. Now, granted, that is not an exhausted list of everything it can be. We're going to look at, well, we'll look at fuel trim data. Now, I don't know if these are flex fuel or not. I'm going to look and see, because if that's the case, first thing we're going to look at is alcohol. Alcohol content, 30%. Not in our little town, old son. We don't have any place around here to buy ethanol fuel. So right there is probably our problem. So he's been heaving parts and guessing and fuel pumping it, money for something that's probably going to be a push of a button reset. Prior to doing that, let's fire this pig up and see where our fuel trims are, first of all. He's cold. All right, let's see where we're at here. So right now, fuel trim's only at -5, but it's still an open loop here because coolant's only 42 degrees. I'm gonna let it warm up. Oops. We're gonna let it warm up here. We're gonna look at the mass airflow. We're gonna look at our fuel trims. We're gonna look at our loop status. Because you just don't want this to be a red herring. Okay, it's saying 30%, yeah, it's off, but maybe it's not causing our problem here. Well, we can see we're still in open loop status, but look, our fuel trim's cutting back 12%, 13, climbing. All right, we're already outside of the limit that would make us happy. You know, ideally, you know, your fuel trims, lots of great videos on fuel trims out there, but ideally, perfect world, they're at 0. I like, you know, plus or minus 10% is fine, in my opinion, but let's let her run here and see what happens. All right, I went and made some coffee and came back, and here we are. So we're -20 on both long terms with a -6 or 7. What? Yeah, I just did that for you. On the short term. So that puts us over 25 or thereabouts. So we're definitely at our limits, definitely running rich. It's almost fully warmed up. We're a closed loop. Mass airflow, teeny tiny bit over reporting. But if I remember, these LS engines are just a little bit over, you know, I'd expect around 5.5 grams per second-ish. So that's not worrying me, and that's certainly not making that big a fuel correction. Let me find out about resetting this alcohol counter. So I just clicked on special function. We're gonna go fuel composition reset. Now you should actually check to see if it has alcohol in it. 30%. We're going to reset the counter. Now we're back to 3. All right, let's go ahead and start this thing up. Content. And then what we're going to do now is I'm going to let it run, and we're going to let it repopulate our fuel trims and see what's up there. So we can see right now our short terms are starting to climb. Like I say, plus or minus 10% is going to be a whole lot better than plus or minus whatever it was at 20. So I'm going to let her run here. And I don't know how much oil contamination there is from running rich, but we'll let her warm up, see where it settles out. Well, she's kind of steadying out here. We've got some more positive numbers on our short term. So I imagine it's going to settle out, you know, -7 to -9, somewhere in that area. Almost fully warmed up. Our mass airflow is down more where I would expect it. And like I say, as these populate a little more, I think we'll be fine. She's throttled by wires, so we can't rev it up. But I imagine if we get something to lift this thing up, we can have another look here. Because this is at an idle, you know, high manifold vacuum. So if it is pulling from the PCV system, you're going to get a little bit. But this is nowhere near setting off an engine light. Let me bump the throttle. There we go. What do we got here? So about 2,000 RPM. We can see our fuel trim numbers are almost absolutely perfect. Almost absolutely perfect. Wow. Alright, so we'll let her back to an idle here. Must be in a different fuel cell block because it's starting to populate this now. Burning some of that extra fuel out of the cylinders and stuff. I only anticipate this will get better. Of course, now we got a little bit of purge going on too. You have to be mindful of that. I'd say she looks good. Alright, well that was the easy one. No parts required. Click of a button. It's a real shame, you know, the other shop he had it at, that he's got too much money invested. When really that's probably all it needed from the beginning. But it does have the code in it for the knock sensor. Anybody who's ever owned a Chevrolet, you know what that means. I'm sure she's routed off under the intake. We'll shine our camera down there. Oh, that one's still got the foam in it. Wow, nobody's had that off. So that's still got the foam under the intake. So the problem with these trucks, knock sensors sit under the intake down into the engine block, and they get full of water and then they corrode off. So you end up putting knock sensors and a wiring harness in them. It's a little short harness. I just want to see if the drive cycle's done. And it is not. So they did the old classic code clear before it was brought in. So we have 3 monitors that are incomplete. I'm going to say evap, catalyst, and O2. O2, evap, and catalyst. This guy's good. And then, so I always jump into generic OBD2 because when you're writing the bill up for the customer, you know, you can tell them, you know, drive cycle's not done. This is an incomplete diagnosis, but you know, there's our 3 codes and our 3 pending codes. So our classic knock sensor codes, and then the rich codes. Rich codes are fixed, knock sensor codes are not. Let me call him and see what he wants to do. Am I gonna test the knock sensor circuit? We can. Just plugs in back there. I think we can just do an ohm test on it. Our scan tool here. What is the resistance value supposed to be? I have no idea. Something high. I don't know, 25,000 ohms, 25 kiloohms, something. Who knows? Usually these are open circuited, so it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. Let's see, get that unplugged. Come on, my God, there we go. Little metal tab there. Now, so we're just gonna go from here to ground. Find something here on the block, and that one is 101 kiloohms. This one here is 102 kiloohms. Oh, very interesting. Usually one of these is open circuited. Ooh, maybe they put knock sensors in it. 101.5, the buzz, 101.5 kiloohms. I'm just double checking myself here. Go to this one here. 102.1 kiloohms. Oh, very interesting. Looks like the original harness. Okay. Very interesting. Now I'm gonna have to actually look. That's annoying. Not the best test to do, but typically they're completely open circuit. I pulled her out. We're gonna go for a little toot. And to see, I just don't want to put a lot of time into those knock sensors. They are within specs. But if we go under additional trouble codes, we can see right now the 332 has not run, or the 372. No, those are the two common codes for the knock sensors. I'm gonna drive it a little bit and see if those populate, and kind of go from there. I'll be honest with you, I've never seen those codes be anything other than the knock sensors themselves. So that's it. And at the end of the day, it's a lot easier to pull that intake off and just do a visual inspection than it is anything else. You know, we can throw a scope on it and, you know, tap on the intake or tap on the exhaust manifold and look at the frequency output of the sensor and all that stuff. But not trying to be lazy. Oh yeah, I guess I am. We're going to keep an eye on our fuel trims as we're driving and see where they end up steadying out as it starts to populate all the different cell blocks there. Well, I think it's a little too warmed up to run those monitors. I wasn't sure at which point those knock sensor monitors ran. But anyhow, the fuel trims bang on the money. Pretty happy with that. I'm going to give the customer the choice. You know, we can look into the knock sensor stuff a little bit further if he wants to. Or, you know, you can see if it's going to run the drive cycle. You know, go from there. I mean, you got almost 265 on the clock. He said he's already into it pretty deep. I don't know how deep he wants to go. I'll let him decide. That's it, folks. Yeah, I didn't run that 327, 332, or pretty much any of the other drive cycle for that matter, but I'll be curious to see, like I say, what he wants to do, see how this thing ends. You know, maybe, I don't know. Like I say, I've never seen those codes caused by anything else, so I don't know if it was, you know, running rich, if that can goof up the knock sensor frequency. I doubt it. I'm just talking at this point. But like I say, just doing the resistance value on them, which is not a great test to do on those. You know, that seemed normal, but who knows? They could be failing more when they're hot or when they're cold. You know, it's really difficult to say, but I'll see what he wants to do. If he wants to do anything else, get one towed in on a trailer. Awesome. Insta, Facebook, And just remember, viewers, if I can do it, you can do it. Thanks for watching.